Sure. And good morning to all of you who stayed with us. It's just 8:35 and 50 degrees outside now, but the wind is really starting to pick up. We're averaging 6 to 8 miles an hour out of the southeast, and it's still going to be a pretty nice day at 61 degrees. Joining me this morning is poet William Tecku, and we'll be talking about Christmas poems, stories, and films that have influenced our thoughts and actions during the Christmas season. Well, good morning, Mr. Tecku.
Morning, Mark. It's a pleasure to be back visiting with you and the wonderful WOJB listenership that I've had the opportunity to share my reflections with for, I think, about 4 decades, to tell you the truth, since the station started.
Okay.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, I know, it does.
But it's great. And before we get rolling in the wind here, so to speak, blowing in the wind at least, I just wanted to congratulate and commend you on your transition, almost a year now, into morning show host. I think it's been so refreshing and so informative and many times uplifting in light of all the heartbreak around the globe and so forth.
Right.
So,
oh, wow, thank
that's,
you.
So in honor of that, thinking, well, Mark's trademark is the Hawaiian shirt. I thought I'd wear my Hawaiian hat.
Well, see, I thought you had your hair colored or something. You went blonde on me or
right. No.
For those on radio who can't see Bill, it looks like a giant afro on top of his head, but it's his hat. And if you want to see it, you can join us on Facebook or YouTube, the WOJB stations live as we stream this conversation. Yeah, thank you for your
my winter cap, and I tip my hat to you. In fact, I actually will take my winter hat off because that's just kind of a spoof.
I don't know, you look younger with it on.
Let me get that hat. Where did I set that hat down at? But no.
Yeah, take your jacket off. Stay a while.
Yeah.
Oh, now look, you wear a tropical shirt.
Yes.
Interesting.
This is why it's important to see this show today on Facebook. Where do they go, Mark? Where do they go to see it?
They just look up WOJB on Facebook or YouTube, and they'll find us.
The shirt out as Hawaiian shirts. As Hawaiian shirts are worn out. But yes, I wanted to just say, hey, solidarity with Mark, the WOJB, almost a year program host, and longer than that, station engineer.
Yeah.
That all this so much, William Carlos Williams said so much depends upon the red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. But here, so much depends upon Mark Lundeen, your host in the morning, because he also wears another hat, and that is station engineer. So I don't know how you do it, unless do you have a twin?
I have some help. He's not my twin. No, he's not. He's actually much taller and thinner than I am, but I do have a helper. So
you do a great job.
Thank you.
So
I want to ask you about your style of poem writing. It is not what I would call rhythmic or rhyming sort of poems. It's not
it's not
traditional poem writing.
Yeah.
It has what do you call it? What's his style?
Mulligan stew, more or less.
Mulligan stew.
It's that my Irish coming out in my writing style. I would call it prose poetry, and I use traditional poetic elements, whether it's personification, alliteration, simile, metaphor, extended metaphor. The list goes on.
It's a lot of technicalities now, but there again, you're an English teacher, a professor.
I did teach. Well, I wish I had been a professor, but I was happy teaching high school English nevertheless.
Right. So you know all the technicalities of writing styles, and it's interesting how you chose this type of style.
I
'Cause
think that's
goodness,
very astute
interesting.
on your part to pick up on that, because prose poetry is not the what most people relate to when they or think about when they think of poetry. They think
Right.
of something very traditional in terms of stanzas and rhyme,
Right. Yep.
that type of thing, and that's a lot of it has to do with what we're taught in school. And you mentioned earlier about maybe we talk a little how Christmas has influenced us, and I think by the clock we won't be talking a whole lot about that. But
Yeah.
Christmas writing, I mean, we think of the night before Christmas. We even think of so many songs, whether it's Silent Night, or you name the White Christmas, all these different seasonal songs that use rhyme, some based on poems. And for me, I just, unlike my mentor Bob Dylan and various others, Frost, in with his pieces, and Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
I just at some point about 50 years ago decided to go into more of a storytelling direction with prose poetry.
Mm.
And I just stayed with that. Occasionally, I will try to quote unquote rhyme and pieces and put them in stanzas, just something different that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I come back to like this first piece, for instance.
Yes. Yeah.
This is from again. You've got to go to the Facebook page that Mark. This will be posted on Facebook, so then you can see. I'll be reading excerpts from this I call story scroll. I'll just hold it up here. Pretty short, as you can see. I think it's about 8 feet long. And it's called Christmas Coffee. It has 13 parts. And so fortunately, we have all day, right, Mark? And
Right.
so we're not going to get through 13 parts. We'll get through a few. And this is part 1 from my story scroll, Christmas Coffee. Yeah,
Yeah.
that red-bearded old elf was right. Die slowly enough, and you'll see yourself floating above yourself for a little while. Go out slowly enough, and you'll hear yourself telling your hands that grasp at straws, "Give me a hand, get me off the ceiling." Then, in your slow motion, cold, floating exit, your words will start coming out the wrong way. You'll say to yourself that if you could just get the words out the right way, the easy way you used to say things like, "On Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, on Blitzen," your hands would perk up and pull you back. You could wobble back up to your feet and get back to work as a seasonal Santa. You'd replay your last shift and the one or two before that, but this time you'd be happy as an elf for the perfect gift of one more shift to work. This time, if you suddenly confused your words and said, "On Donner, on Blitzen, on Donner, on Donner," you'd hear a 6-year-old on your knee say, "Santa, that's not the way it goes." You'd get hotter and hotter instead of colder and colder inside your bulging red and white suit. If it didn't look like a white Christmas was coming, that would look good. If you saw a blizzard barreling in across the mall's double parked parking lot, blowing back into the caroling stores, all the strident shoppers and all the Salvation Army bell ringers, that too would look good. All the Santa for Christmas I want, please, would sound as soft and sonorous to your ears as Silent Night. No matter if your hands didn't hear you yelling for your life, hollering like you were at a hockey game to get back inside your unwrapped self, trying to get back to reassure all hands that you'll be watching them, and if they're good, Santa will get them down from their ceilings too. Santa, I want a Barbie doll convertible car. Santa, I want a dog-eat robot dog. an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and Santa, I want you to get those Russians out of Ukraine. Santa, I want a mix and learn DJ table. Santa, I want my brother to win another state football championship. Santa, I want my sister not to try out for football next year. Santa, I want a Barbie, not a holiday Barbie. Bring me the Barbie who's married to the world champion football player. He puts her on his lap. See? Tells her he can buy her everything in the mall. Tells her she can even buy all the Barbies and Kens who own the Barbie doll company. Santa, I want you to get off the ceiling. A boy may finally say. Your line of believers snowballs into a chorus of that boy's words. Their voices burn in your ears and roar like a runaway chimney fire until you don't feel the wettest child on your lap anymore, let alone feel your deaf hands. You only know that it's just you, all alone, begging the boy inside you to crawl, claw, or cry back down into the sled of yourself to give the old familiar whistle to the team. Give them reins enough to fly the world, where wise men have the wisdom to sometimes play dumb about the cross that waits just down the road from the manger. Yeah, from somewhere as close as the North Pole, you may barely hear your sobbing voice whisper, on Donner, on Donner, on Donner, as you hang on as tight as a string of big bulb, brightly lit house lights banging in a storm. Hang on tight as a Scrooge who tugs on mortality's beard to see if it is real. As you hang on by a shoestring from the outer reaches of the upper stratosphere until you wobble back up and guess it will be another day before your hands ice still on the straw-covered floor of Rudolph's stall. Shake hands with Polaris.
Wow, interesting. What? Where?
Where the heck did that come from?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. So, how did you develop? Now, there's several other scrolls here that you have listed throughout this, and that was just the first one.
Yeah, that was part one of Christmas Coffee.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, where's your inspiration come from, and where do you come up with this idea for this particular story?
Yeah. Well, this was to me in a way pretty easy. It was actually a news story I heard some years ago. I don't recall if it took place in the Phoenix area or somewhere on the East Coast, but it was reported that a seasonal Santa had passed out while, getting the request from the kids at a mall.
Oh, wow.
And they thought he was gone. And it was a near-death experience. And I don't know if some parent or someone around that area actually brought him back. And I thought this is kind of an interesting, storyline. Wonder what I can do with it. And what you just heard is what I did with it.
Right.
So
yeah, because as I read it, I thought of a near-death experience where usually people who have had those experiences feel like they're stuck on the ceiling or just above their body or the situation. Good and point. They can see everything that's going on. And, it was just like, wow. Now, this really hit home for me because my father was a seasonal Santa.
Whoa.
Up until he passed. And
sorry to hear that.
It was like, oh my goodness, this is just so interesting how you're describing how I think as my dad passed, his experience in the room that his body was there, and
Right.
and I know he would have clawed back
Sure.
at any moment just to be able to go back to the mall and have kids sit on his
Oh, for
lap and
sure.
talk about it. It was just
Happy
like
as an elf
that
for one
was-
more shift to work.
that was his life. In fact, he was a year-round seasonal Santa. He did not. He kept the gig up
Wow.
year-round.
Have you ever
with
thought about
kids.
sort
Well,
of following
I-
your father's footsteps?
No.
Not to the near-death experience,
Yeah.
but being a seasonal Santa?
No, because one, my wife won't let me have a beard.
Okay, well, we'll work on that.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to see how life goes here in the next several years, but
Well, you never know. There was a miracle on
now.
34th Street.
yeah.
See the film, you'll get it. And it is a wonderful life. So maybe you will get that beard. But the other thing, like in this part two, I'd like to share with your listeners this morning from the Christmas Coffee Scroll. That, as I said, you're going to have to go to Facebook to check out the visual from a few minutes ago.
Sure.
But this particular piece was something that came to me after I'd written a number of other pieces over the years, focusing on just the sort of traditional nativity scene with Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the wise men, and so forth.
Okay.
And I got to thinking, well, the shepherds were there. Why don't we hear from them?
Sure.
So
Okay.
this is the result of that consideration.
All right.
And it's part two from Christmas Coffee. Remember? The night they were immortalized as the shepherds, they left their flocks under the light of the dog star. It was cold. It smelled cold enough to snow. Remember. Forget it or not, memories we remember best around us and around we remember by their smells. Sheepdogs that bark loudest with their eyes know this, like they know which ewes to nip and which not to nip, to move them forward, backward, or follow along like Roman legionnaires on the march, on the march. Forgettable? Unforgettable? Why is it that Christmas after Christmas, the sheepish but not shy shepherds less and less graze the back pastures of our memories? Who other than the heralding angels whose words hearken to them to see, to celebrate the lamb they, after that night, knew as their good shepherd, can tell us about these men living out in the fields near Bethlehem? Unlike the three kings, whose names, number, and gifts are a matter of record, the shepherds, hapless or blessed, keeping watch over their flocks at night, cast slight shadows, historic or otherwise, save for their smell, their eye-watering, marrow-deep sheep manure smell. Or, as the occupying Romans joked, you can smell those shepherds before you hear their bleating sheep. Through no fault of their own, such derision flocked to the shepherds. Camel drivers, spice traders, short change artists from Jerusalem to Jericho and back again mocked them behind their backs, as if the camel dung that stuck to their sandals and oozed through their toes didn't stink. Even their gratuitous sheep, at least once a week, tried to pull the wool over their eyes by crying wolf, just as they nodded off or squinted awake. Too soon, to them it seemed, the dog star disappeared. Too soon, it seemed to them, they once again were one with their crooks. They smiled. The loud silence of falling snow cooled their Christmas coffee. They smiled.
That's really nice. I just,
Thank you.
especially the way you read it. It's instead of just because the emotion comes out as you read and kind of speak into that whole piece. That's really cool, and I like the descriptions of some of the not so nice things that are squishing between their toes,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh dear, yes,
Tried to bring in some realism
yeah,
to the shepherd's life.
very cool.
This last, it might be the last. We got 5 minutes left.
Yeah,
This is a few minutes, but this is this was kind of based on a real event some years ago in Denver. Not that it doesn't almost happen annually, but big blizzard came into to Denver, Colorado, around Christmas, and at some point I thought, well, like you see in bumper stickers where people, what would Jesus do? So I thought, okay, how would Jesus handle going through the result of a big snowstorm in Denver? And this is what came out. This
okay.
is from part 11 of my story scroll, Christmas Coffee. Jesus downshifted his rusty red pickup into Denver just after midnight this Christmas. His tire chains rattled behind snow plows that rumbled down half open freeways. The radio replayed weather updates for the interstates, the airport, and the blizzard's expected delays. A snowman Jesus passed heard him say, "Love is the gift that never melts away." Riding shotgun with Jesus, a couple of angels debated the top 10 all time Christmas hymns. In the silent night, they wagered when the malls would open again. Jesus got hungry and wondered if the next IHOP would be open or drifted in. Would a cook in a Santa cap work overtime to make pigs and blankets for him? Denver's believers dreamed like Judeans or like the Romans who once herded them. 2,000 years after the first Christmas, Jesus heard people pray, "Jesus, please protect our Middle Eastern oil positions. And please, please stop the snow by Sunday so the Broncos can play in Mile High Stadium." An icicle sunrise saw Jesus still trailing snowplows down Denver's deserted roads. His omniscient mind meandered from overheard prayers to lovers' dreams to kids he watched playing in the snow on side streets after dark. He drank his coffee from an old thermos and mused about mankind's long row left to hoe. Downtown, he wiped his eyes when he spied the hungry, the hopeless, hunkered down in their cardboard torn tents in snowdrifts. That afternoon, he found a room in an inn with a wireless and satellite TV. He fixed the ice machine in his hallway. He had a drink with his angel friends and checked online for shows at the Paramount and Buckskin Joe's. Could he make Santa Fe by Christmas Day if the roads south stayed closed? Was he done with his Christmas shopping for Mary Magdalene? God, not him, only knew. Jesus downshifted his rusty red pickup into Denver just after midnight today. His tire chains rattled behind snowplows that rumbled down half-open freeways. The radio replayed weather updates for the interstates, the airport, and the blizzard's expected delays. A snowman Jesus passed heard him say, "Love."
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Interesting way of,
Thank you very much.
yeah,
And thank you for
to
those
just,
folks in the listening audience who hung with us,
you're right.
hung in here with us this half hour.
Yeah.
Appreciate
We've
that.
been talking with Bill Tecku, poet and author, and you can see some of his work at this website, www.roadreflections.com. Thank you, Bill, for sharing.
Well, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good morning.
Yes, good morning. It is time for Democracy Now! Here on WOJB.
All right, that was fun. It was fun for me. Was it fun for you?